And we are live. It is exactly 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for jumping into the webinar. I see all the little icons popping up quickly. So many people have registered for this one. This is going to be a good one. I'm excited because there is so much talk and debate about SEO and content, and could we be using AI, and should we be using AI, and how do we use AI? And so why not just kind of do a whole webinar on this? And so we're going to give everybody a couple minutes just to get logged in here for a few minutes. I still see the number of registrants kind of popping in. We kind of signed in a little bit early. And it's great that I've got some of my colleagues here with me. I'll give everybody just a more formal introduction, but as always, you see him at all the conferences. He's one of the most likable guys in the industry, the ever famous Rob Coleman. Thank you for being here today.
Always glad to join, and I always learn something with each one of these.
We do. Me too. And then somebody that kind of works mostly behind the scenes.
The person you never see, yeah.
Yes, works behind the scenes, but wasn't always that way. Jessica was actually, she led like our client services team for a while, and she started out as like an account manager. Like you were on calls with clients. What, going back 6-7 years now, Jessica, that you've been with Hennessy?
6.5 years.
Wow. Yeah. So, and so a lot of the stuff that everybody sees if you enter our platform or a dashboard, a lot of that is all proprietary to what we do at Hennessy Digital, but Jessica is also leading like product design inadvertently as well. Anyway. All right. So let's see here. I'll give everybody maybe like another minute or so to get registered. I still see more eyeballs popping in. If you can see us, if you can hear us, let's put hi Jessica as our welcome message here in the chat. Let's see, and maybe hi Jessica, where you guys are calling in from? Which city, which state, which country, which planet? There we go. Perfect. Look at all the people here. We got Aaron. Some of our team members are on the call. I always love that when our team joins these calls as well.
Hello, Holden. Glad you could join us, Holden.
Yep, this is great. Springfield, Massachusetts in the house. South Africa, okay. Welcome. South Carolina. Awesome. All right, let's get started here because we've got a lot to cover. Jessica has been working on this presentation for a while, and anytime Jessica speaks, I stop what I'm doing, I listen because she always adds value. And so, like I mentioned, Jessica Monroe has been with us for over 6 years at the agency. She leads our entire content team. That includes our writers, our editors, our publishers, right? All of the stuff that kind of goes on behind the scenes. Our content strategist, right? Like people don't even realize what is a content strategist, right? And so without further ado, I'm going to let Jessica kind of take the stage. Just set some ground rules here. If you do have questions, that's Rob's job. Rob is going to be looking at the Q&A section. So if you do have a question that's pertinent to what Jessica's talking about, please, by all means, post it in there. Rob might pause the moment and have Jessica answer that question, or he might save that for the end of the presentation too. We'll have some time at the end here. I guess we can get started. So Jessica, let me make us a little bit smaller here. I'll move us at the bottom, and I'll let you take it off. Take it over.
Yeah, alrighty. Well, let me go ahead and queue up the presentation here. Right. All right, can everybody see?
It looks like it's loading. Let me add it to stage here. Perfect. There we go. And let me see if I can move us out of the way here. 1 second. There you go, Jessica.
All right, great. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Jason prefaced so kindly, I am Jessica Rowe. I am the Senior Director of Content here at Hennessy Digital, and I oversee all of our content operations. And obviously with AI and AI content has been such a big part of our operations for the past couple of years. So today we're going to be talking about how to use it to optimize your content, to generate your leads. However, before we dive into how we're going to use AI, I think it's really important that we understand how AI search engines interact with legal SEO content, and then using those interactions to show you guys how we identify best practices, and also, how we've identified our optimization tactics, right? So first things first, I'm going to borrow a quote from Jason. This was actually in the first webinar that you guys did with Rob, which is, if you're not visible in traditional search, you won't be visible in AI search either, right? It's really important to understand that SEO content and AI search are really intrinsically linked, right? Like ChatGPT, other LLMs, they're not creating new information. They are using information that is available on the web, and they're often using people to find that information. In fact, looking at a recent study for Search Engine Land, 31% of ChatGPT prompts currently trigger at least one search of the web. The average is actually 2 searches per prompt with a max of 4, which means if it's doing multiple searches, there are multiple opportunities for you to appear in the search results or get cited. So I'm showing you an example of what this actually looks like. So here I put in a query for best lawyer to hire for a serious car accident in Los Angeles, right? So for traditional SEO, this would be considered more of a long tail keyword, not so much for AI search. Over 75% of all ChatGPT queries are much longer, over 5 words. But in this case, for this search, it has provided a fairly simple list of the top car accident and personal injury attorneys in Los Angeles. And to generate this look, it took 3 searches with 3 subqueries, which I actually used a tool to determine what the queries were that it used. It's called ChatGPT Search Capture, which is just a Chrome plugin that you can use to analyze ChatGPT search behavior, provides information on sources, entities. And one thing that I want to point out in particular is this query fan out panel right here. So spotlighting this query fan out, these are the subqueries that it broke my initial query of best lawyer to hire for a serious car accident into the searches that it uses to search the web. So the first one is a pretty close match to the original search that I put in. The second one, however, it added top rated. It added personal injury in addition to car accident. The next one did top. So it's variations. They're very similar. But when you dive into understanding how AI analyzes content, it uses semantically related terms, uses contextual language, there are slight nuances here that will represent itself later on when you're creating content. These can be very valuable for you guys to know and look at how it is generating the search results. So if we go back to the search results themselves, it's pretty clear. Dominguez firm, this is the kind of winner of this particular result. They have actually 2 links. All of the firms that are listed are linked, but this one actually had 2 citations. The first link here was pointing to their transactional car accident page, whereas the second citation was pointing to their homepage, which is optimized for top personal injury lawyers. And then there was also one additional citation that actually appeared above the list itself. And this was for Gerald Marcus Law, a informational page, which was a match to that main query and that first subquery, right? So even though it wasn't in the list, it might not be noticed or clicked on by the average user. It still is definitely a really powerful citation for that firm. And you can see here now we have, informational page, a transactional page, the branded homepage. These are all different types of SEO content that are getting pulled into these results. And that is something where it's really important for me, and we talk about it a lot when we're talking about SEO content. Any of our team members who are on the call or any of our clients who are listening in today have certainly heard me talk about transactional versus informational content. And I do want to take a minute just to go into the distinction of what those two types of content are, because they're important for SEO content and they are important for AI search content as well. So when we're talking about transactional content, this is content that is designed to convert and drive leads. They're targeting high-value keywords like personal injury lawyer, Los Angeles car accident lawyer. They often come in the form of practice area pages. And in the organic results, transactional searches, the real estate, they're competing with the paid results, GBP map pack. Sometimes you see people also ask on those pages, not always, but sometimes. And you also sometimes see the directories that are competing with the actual law firm pages. So like the super lawyers and justias and all that. To contrast, we have informational content. Now, these pages are not necessarily designed to drive leads. Their main purpose is to drive traffic to the particular page and to be full of EEAT signals. EEAT stands for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. And in traditional SEO, those are the signals that Google uses in order to determine if a page is considered relevant and authoritative enough to rank for a certain subject. But the more EEAT traffic you have coming to your site, the more it's going to improve the overall authority of your domain as a whole. So having really strong informational content will not just help the individual pages rank, they will help transactional pages rank. It'll help, kind of rising tide lifts all boats scenario. These come in the form of multiple content types, most commonly FAQs and blog posts. And historically, informational searches were shared with featured snippets, and those people also ask SERP features. And those are really coveted features because like featured snippets were at one point considered position 0 way back in the day. They were so valuable, they were above the organic rankings, and they had a very high click-through. Now they've been highly replaced with AI overviews. And that is something that has been a huge shift in the amount of organic traffic we're seeing. As we go towards more zero-click search, we're seeing less click-throughs on those searches, but AI overviews is still valuable in the umbrella of AI search. And that's another thing that I want to make a distinction on, because I've been talking about AI search generally, but there are really two common acronyms thrown around, and there are two paths to success. People use these interchangeably, GEO and AEO, but it's not quite the case. So the first one is generative engine optimization, GEO. So GEO is how AI understands your brand and your site holistically, right? This is how generative engines, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, when they're using those multiple searches, those subqueries, they're pulling all of those different sources to generate one singular response. On the other hand, we have AEO. AEO is, there's a lot of overlap, but it's specifically more focused on how to optimize content so that questions can be directly answered and retrieved by basically Google. So in the AI overviews, right? So it's a little bit more specific. There are things that work for these strategies in isolation, but there's so much overlap with both AEO, GEO, and SEO that really getting the biggest return on your time and your investment is focusing on tactics that will work for all three, right? So that said, now we're going to be at the fun part. We're going to go a little bit more into ideating, creating, optimizing content, and some ways that AI can help you along the way. So when it comes to generative engine optimization, a huge factor is topical consistency. And that means basically that all of the content on your site is reinforcing what area of law you practice, how authoritative you are in that subject, and your sustained expertise. Again, kind of harkening back to EEAT, but also making sure that the way that you have structured your site, you're creating clear relationships and relevancy signals between all of your content with an extensive logical site hierarchy. So what you're doing is really creating silos of transactional content. Again, those practice area pages. And I can show you an example of what that looks like here. So this is an example of a location-based structure. So where we have our top level page is like a personal injury lawyer. Nestled underneath that is the Atlanta truck accident lawyer, car accident lawyer page. Beneath the truck accident lawyer page, we have a deeper page like a delivery truck. Beneath that, we have Amazon delivery truck. And you can see, in addition to how I've got it structured on the page, the URL structure kind of follows that. If this were live on a site, we would also have the breadcrumbs following the same structure. The navigation would follow the same structure. The internal in-context links would also reinforce this structure. This makes it very easy for Google and AI search engines to read and identify new content when you are publishing it. And this is a fairly common best practice. I don't think this is probably rocket science to anybody who is on the call today. A lot of agencies use this structure. This is one actually that we have used in the past. We have gone through multiple rounds of testing different taxonomies for structures. We're currently using a variation of this for most of our clients, but it is one of the first things we do, and it's foundational to our content strategies. Is when we sign a new client, we're going to be going through and auditing, updating, and making sure that we have the strongest foundation out of existing content. And this is something that is not really easy to do with AI, I will say, unfortunately. We have tried, we are working on a way of automating it. We have a big old process called recipe cards that we have built a tool to use AI to do that, but it is a very involved process. But one thing you can do, though, is once you have gone through and kind of looked at all your pages, made sure they're in their appropriate hierarchy and siloed them out, is that you do a gap analysis, right? So you're looking at the intersection of all of those location silos that you built out, all the practice areas that you offer. You can see what pages in each silo have been built, which are missing or which are incomplete. So we have used AI to build a tool that can help us do this automatically. It also integrates with our pipeline, our platform that we have where we're creating all of our content. So this is kind of what it looks like, a little sneak peek behind the scenes. And Jason, I don't think even you have seen this or anybody. This is something that one of our content strategists has been working on refining, but it takes a look at all of the practice areas, locations. In this example, it's a client who's targeting personal injury in and around the Atlanta metro area. And you can see what we have that has not been created, what we have built out, total number of pages, and you can see the coverage, which I think is the really coolest thing, which shows the possibility of where we can grow for content and having kind of an idea of a roadmap and how quickly you want to scale when you're building out your content and creating your content strategies, right? Because if we have over 4,000 pages, it could take us years to do that. But maybe if we want to invest a little bit more in creating AI content, like solely AI content, that's a little bit easier than trying to write 4,000 pages by a human.
And what I love about this, Jessica, is that we used to do this. This is a very manual and laborious process, and things would get missed. And so, yeah, like this is so cool how far we've come in being able to kind of structure this, right? Because every single city could have a practice area page and a sub-practice area page and a tertiary page. And so you can kind of see how organized we kind of do things. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Jessica. This is cool.
Yeah. Lots of spreadsheets. And then, of course, the tool also will then output all of those pages that we can have a list. It allows us to download the missing content as a CSV. It does a lot of other stuff too. It's really cool. But the good news is for y'all, this is one that's a little bit behind the scenes for us, but you can recreate it in ChatGPT. Definitely a less sophisticated version, but if you have access to Screaming Frog Crawl, just simply putting in a prompt of asking it to analyze, creating that gap analysis, using a multi-step prompt, the best success you're ever going to have with using AI is using a multifaceted prompt approach. Building out that grid, you will get a grid. It won't have all the integrations. It does take a little bit of work to build it out. It's not so accurate. It's not very good at identifying different levels of the silo, but it will certainly give a start for you to have an output that's something similar that just makes it a little bit easier for y'all to do. All right. So next up, the other piece for geo and establishing, again, that holistic presence is with SEO content is really, again, going back and focusing on the diverse content. So in our not our first webinar, but the last one with Glenn, I know he did, our CTO, he did a great job of talking about how to get off-page citations and proving that you're a legit brand across the web and getting cited in that way. Highly recommend. Also, all of our previous webinars are available on Hennessy.com, so definitely go out and check those. You can watch them for free, the recordings, if you have not already. But when it comes for doing this for on-page, it's really about creating, much more diverse forms of content and focusing beyond the traditional informational and transactional pages that we would for SEO content. So for legitimacy and thought leadership, you do want to create that high quality informational content that meets standard SEO EAT best practices, but you also really want to focus on the E, or the second E in EEAT, and that's experience. The experience portion is something that is really important. It's original data. And original data is highly valued by Google, but it's also even more valued by AI search because, again, going back to ChatGPT, other LLMs, they are scraping the web. They are not generating new information. So they're looking at what's out there. And SEO content is already by nature, especially in the legal space, a little repetitive just because of the way that the industry does build out these silos to target people where they're at. It's a very viable strategy because we're trying to create content that meets people where they're at, but it does generate a lot of similar content, right? You can have, again, we just saw with that gap analysis, you could have, if you're targeting an entire state, maybe of Georgia, you could have hundreds of car accident lawyer pages, and there's not going to be much variation between those. And then you deal with all the competitors who also might have pages that have similar content. So any original data that you can highlight is definitely going to stand out with the AI search. The AI models are all trained to, kind of recognize and weed out redundancy. So thought leadership, one thing you can do is case studies. And by case studies, I don't mean case results. This can also be like data from your firm, like anything you've seen in terms of providing transparency on response times, providing information on maybe work that you've done with insurance companies or something that you've seen firsthand experience. Providing that firsthand data is something that is definitely valued. The other thing is digital PR content, which I really love, work really closely with the digital PR team at Hennessy. This is where we do original studies based on kind of unique data sources related to our clients' practice areas and create truly unique studies that get posted on our client sites. And then we do outreach to media. So this is where you can get both on-page and off-page thought leadership and generate some really good signals that can help you rank in AI search. And it's a great geo strategy as well. The next piece we have is what I call competitive EAT content. And the reason I call it competitive EA content is this comes from some research that our content strategist again did when we were identifying new opportunities to go beyond transactional informational content. We were doing a number of competitive analyses using ChatGPT, and I think Claude was the other one, where we were going through and asking AI to, kind of review our client sites, come up with gaps that they had just in their sitemaps as their content as a whole. And what we found was, each of our content strategists was using slightly different prompts. We were using different models, but we found as we were starting to review these and they were coming in that we were seeing commonalities across all of these analyses. So we did an analysis of the analyses and came up with some things that are really, according to AI, are the things that it is looking for. And so these are the most common ones that we found, particularly tailored to personal injury sites. So the lack of published big wins, lower name recognition, fewer peer awards or certifications, no multilingual support, weak intake speed, or a lack of at least CTA, a presence of CTAs on the site, as well as transparency. So these things are things that are fairly easy to add. And the types of content that you would be creating for them is making sure it's not necessarily that you're creating new content all the time, but it's making sure you have a really good verdict settlement or results page and making sure that you're updating it frequently. Same thing for your reviews and testimonials, making sure that your about pages are highlighting all of the awards or accolades, certifications that you have. Same thing for your attorneys, that their awards, accolades, and certifications are being showcased on their bio pages. In terms of brand recognition, a lot of attorneys I know have like trademarked phrases that they use for their marketing. Create a page specifically for that trademark. Talk about the ethos, talk about how that language factors in to your overall brand, how you operate. That's a really good opportunity to highlight and create some new and diverse content. Same thing with milestones. If you do have awards that you win, create a blog post about it, highlight that on the site, make sure that it's featured everywhere. The other thing is best of lists. I know that Google really loves best of lists, and obviously in the first example that I featured, where we had that best attorney, there was the first citation. That was an attorney page, which had a list there. Now, best of is one that is a little bit problematic because I know that gets into certain states, depending on where you are practicing, really don't like us to use any sort of superlatives in their marking. I know California got really strict with that recently with the advent of SB 37 this month. So it can be a little bit dicey to create those pages. We definitely want to make sure that we're creating content that is also in line with the requirements of the legal industry. So those we have to touch with a little, even though they are like great opportunities, they're always a little bit dicey for us to work on. So you just have to make sure that you're working in compliance if you're considering creating those kind of pages. Getting yourself listed on off page or other best of lists, though, is absolutely great. So highly recommend if you can get yourself placed in one of those, if there's an opportunity there. All right. Now, going over into AEO, so this is where we're talking about more specific tactics, right? So GEO is really kind of more that high level. We're talking about content strategy, identifying topics that you can be, or how to identify topics, what kind of content you should be creating. AEO is really looking at that page level, right? So this is how we're optimizing our pages specifically for AI search. And how to get them appearing in the AI overviews and potentially also in the LLMs. So first thing we're talking about here is I love to talk about cost of retrieval. This is a term that is used that takes into consideration that Google and ChatGPT are businesses first, right? It costs them money to analyze and synthesize your content. So they are incentivized to prioritize pages that are easier for their technology, the bots, the algorithms to process, which is why SEO can come off dry and simplified, regardless of what the reading level that Google actually says they require. They want clarity over complexity. They want easy to read formatting. So making sure that your page structure has a very digestible formatting, lists, tables, very important. Also, chunking is really big. So answer engines, they don't read entire pages in the same way that Google does. This is a little bit different from traditional SEO. They read passages. So an H2 section with the accompanying text, every section should stand on its own when you're writing those. That's a big piece of AEO and the way that you're crafting content. So for example, if you are going to be taking maybe some of those subqueries that we pulled from our tool and then incorporating those into an already existing page, you would want to put that as an H2 heading and then make sure that it stands alone. The answer doesn't require any contextual understanding from the sections above or below it. And again, we want to speak AI's language, right? So speaking language means understanding how the bots process information, how the relationships are working. And this is not just at the site level, not even at the page level. It can be down to the sentence level, right? So when you're asking a question or you're having an FAQ, you want to make sure that you answer in the next sentence in the exact same format, because Google or the algorithm is going to be able to understand that a little bit easier. Also, the way that you phrase your terms and incorporating entities is really important. So Phrase is a tool that we use that allows us to competitively analyze content and come up with terms that are being used across Google search. Entity Enhancer is another tool. This one is from Steve Toth, actually, that goes in and pulls based on certain terms, all of the different entities that are semantically related to a given search term. And I can tell you what this means here now, give you an example, right? So this was taking all the different types of car accident lawyer pages. I just started car accident, but it goes into all of the sub-practice areas. But it shows you the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives that are related to car accident lawyer. It gives you clauses, subject, object, predicate, like very specifically dictates phrases that you should use in your content. It has more search considerations. It has attributes, perspectives. This is a really good one as well. All of this information that you can incorporate into content that is speaking AI's language and helps you kind of differentiate your content and make sure that it is optimized for both Google and for AI search. All right, and so we're optimizing for entities. One thing I mentioned, I highlighted the perspectives. That's also persona. So a big thing about AEO is also when you're dealing with the content and you're writing a lot of content that is similar, you can very easy to worry about cannibalization as well. But if you, the way that AI works is that even if you're getting hyper specific, it does in fact understand the context of content. So in ideating content, new ideas, you can actually write very similar queries within the same page, but contextualize it in the sense of write it from different perspectives. So going back to, the previous one, right? We could very much write about injured victims, legal experts from the perspective of insurance companies, juries, law firms, considering all these perspectives and writing similar content, but with a different persona in mind when you're creating the content will allow you to generate new content, but potentially, again, reach a greater kind of spread of potential for AI search. And the same thing for marketing funnels, looking at kind of considering where people are at the decision process, those more higher levels where people are just looking for general information, where they are actually searching for a lawyer, information about lawyers. And then when they're make those decisions, anything about the cost of a lawyer or, who's the best lawyer making those decisions. That's something that you can also use to kind of vary up your content plans and to diversify content that you're writing.
Hey, Jessica, real fast. So, there's probably many people that are listening to this that are kind of being blown away about how detailed this gets especially when you go back to that last slide there that you had. So if you're on this webinar and it's like, hey, you went to a conference and somebody told you content is important and you just need to publish blog content on your website, a lot of times, you could actually be doing yourself more harm than good, because if you're just having somebody just publish content on the website without a strategy, without understanding the sentence structure and how you connect entities and stuff like that, I've seen cases where you actually hurt your website more than you help your website.
Yes.
And so anyway, just kind of pay close attention to this, because this gets really, really sophisticated when you're trying to rank in the top 3 positions on Google for a very competitive term. You've got some of the most sophisticated SEOs and agencies that are using science like this to do that. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out. If you've got a team and they're just publishing content just to publish content, you might want to kind of reevaluate things.
Well, that is actually a perfect segue, Jason. Thank you so much, because one of the difficulties that we deal with is, it's hey, we've got all these subqueries. So maybe we've scraped them with the entity, the entity enhancer. Maybe we use the ChatGPT plugin that I shared in the beginning. Maybe you just use, ChatGPT. Say, hey, give me 20 subqueries for these 20 queries that I have that you searched in Ahrefs. There's an endless number of ways that you can generate all of these different queries. And because we're getting hyper specific, because we have all of these super long prompts that AI is using and synthesizing, it opens up a much wider possibility. Because with traditional SEO, the main concern is cannibalization. If you have too much content that is too similar, they will compete against each other and neither of them will rank well. That's not necessarily a concern with AI search in the same way because, again, of the way that it scrapes data, the way that it synthesizes information. But going back, if it isn't, ranking, it really doesn't exist in AI search. So you have to kind of thread the needle. So when we're going with these subqueries and incorporating them into content, the question is whether or not you're creating a brand new page for that subquery, or if you are maybe just incorporating it as an FAQ within an existing page or a brand new page, grouping it with others, in a chunked article, right? So one thing that I look at and talk about with the content strategist on my team is kind of the considerations of how can we consider whether or not it's a unique query. And sorry, do users think it's a unique location that's supposed to be query? First thing we can look at is, search volume. Is there search volume? So in this case, I went through and I pulled from that entity enhancer all of those queries that are the search considerations that it had, and I just popped them into Ahrefs and looked at which of those had volume. So in this case, who is the best car accident lawyer near me? How much does a car accident lawyer cost? What does a car accident lawyer do? These all have some volume. When should I hire a car accident lawyer is a little bit smaller, but all of these at least have some verifiable volume. So these are the 4 that I might consider creating unique pages for. The other ones, though, I would look at, can I incorporate them into one of these new pages, or can I incorporate them to existing content on the site? That way, we're still, again, meeting the benefits of traditional SEO and avoiding cannibalization, but we're also incorporating all of these subqueries so that they're present on the site. They're enhancing both their potential to rank in organic as well as in AI search. So, the other thing also is looking at whether Google thinks it's a unique query. Google is a great source in the same way that we go to ChatGPT to ask questions about ChatGPT. You can go to Google to ask questions about Google. If you search any of these queries, is it popping up similar content? This is something that we look at also when we're creating transactional content and deciding if we're going to be targeting a specific location, if Google thinks it's a unique location. But those are the 2 ways that you can kind of make that decision of whether or not you're going to be creating new content or incorporating a query into existing content. All right. So when you are adding FAQs as H2s within new or existing content, as of right now, I would say focus on putting them into informational pages. And the reason for this is we want to make sure that they're still in alignment with user intent for SEO. We have historically gone back and forth and in the past few years have really shied away from incorporating FAQs on transactional pages because it all comes down to, again, user intent. We want to keep our transactional pages really focused on the brand, what is being offered, driving users towards conversion, whereas informational pages are designed to have those who, what, when, why, where questions. If you want to know more about user intent and content type, shout out to Natasha, who I think is watching. She has a great blog post, how to optimize content for SEO on the HD blog, and you can read more about it there. But I wanted to say that because that is our best practice currently. However, we are testing that. So we're doing a lot of testing. We're doing a lot of experiments. This is such a fast evolving space. And a lot of the things, again, that worked for traditional SEO are in opposition to what might work for AI search. So this is when we're testing. We're starting to add it. We're going to be seeing, hopefully we'll have some results soon. And if we do have some really good finds, we'll publish that on our blog as well. But for now, I can't say with certainty, like, oh yeah, go ahead and add a bunch of subqueries, H2, question chunks on your transactional pages, because that could actually, it might help for AI search, but it may also ding you a little bit on SEO. So again, going to those nuances and kind of finding the balance there. All right. But that said, just kind of in summation, a lot of what we talked about here was, kind of putting your content plan together. So new content creation should really be a balance of those siloed and interlinked transactional content, the original high quality informational content, boost your on and off page brand recognition, hyper-specific informational content to provide contextualized answer-ready content for AEO, and then highlighting, refreshing that competitive EAT / the brand-centric content. So that's what you're looking when you're creating a content plan. This is really the for SEO, for AEO, for GEO. It should have all of these different elements in it. Now, whether you have it's 90% transactional and 10% informational, 1% brand centric is going to be really dependent on the needs of your firm, whether you're in growth mode, whether you are looking to branch into a new market, that potentially you need to go a little bit heavy for transactional, maybe for a month or a quarter. If you were looking to more improve the quality of your leads, the quality of leads coming from AI right now, because those prompts are so specific, is a little bit better. So maybe you want to focus on doing more informational, hyper-specific, and brand-centric content. So it is driven, it's unique. Like there's no one size fits all for a content plan when you're putting that together. So that's very important to keep in mind. All right. And then last but not least, we're going to be talking about creating content with AI. And should you do it? The answer is yes, because we're doing it and we're seeing some good stuff. But the issue is really quality and scalability versus scalability, right? So it is very easy to create AI content when you are creating it on a page by page basis. But when you want to scale up, like say if you want to build all of those 4,000 missing pages from our content gap example with AI, you're going to run into definite quality issues when you are scaling up, because you're going to have just meeting the limits of what AI can do, what AI can generate, lacking the original data, lacking all of those signals that I just talked about. So those are the issues that we know about. But what's really important at the end of the day is also performance. Does AI content actually perform in the search results? So we did a couple of studies, and I want to share the data with you guys because I think it's very interesting. So shout out to Blinn for helping with this. We built a script that did the AI detection scores for the top 20 organic and top 3 PPC results for city personal injury lawyer in the 40 biggest metros. So basically looking at what the AI score of those pages was. And you can see here the results across the board. For position 1, that AI score, probability of AI writing, is down at 4. Position 2, 4. 3, just under 7%. And it does increase as you go down. So we do have pages or content on the first page, certainly that has a much higher probability of written by content. But if you're competing in a large metro in very competitive markets, you don't want to have necessarily content that is being flagged as AI written. This is a commonality. I think it's pretty interesting to see the comparison there.
Hey, Jessica, let me just kind of summarize this. So what I'm seeing here is we went and we checked all of the top 40, whatever, Los Angeles personal injury lawyer. And so what we see here is that position 1, position 2, position 3 have very low AI detectability. And what did we use? Like originality.ai or one of those types of tools?
Yeah, we used originality.ai. We also cross-referenced with Grammarly, because Grammarly is a tool that we use as well. And it was pretty comparable across the two.
Got it. Okay. So that's really important. So, that is definitely a tool. We're not saying that you should not use AI, but you have to have like human beings that kind of come in and edit things. On the same token, though, it might be perfectly acceptable to use, a more AI generated page for something that has low competition and low search volume, right? So what do I mean? Yeah. So are you going to get into that next? Okay.
Exactly. That's our second study. So this is a study of our clients. So we had a lot more detailed data for this. And so we looked at all of our clients who were producing roughly an equivalent number of AI and human written pages to see how they were performing. And we looked at a couple of different metrics. We looked at all pages that had been written within 30 days. or over the course of 30 days. We looked at all the pages we published over the course of 6 months. We looked at all the pages that were ranking from position 1 to 10, how they were performing, and also new pages and how they performed in the first 30 days. And this is a lot of numbers I know here, but in a quick summary, basically human written content had higher queries and impressions across the board. However, AI content had higher clicks and average position, whereas conversions went to human written content. And the reason why we have a higher clicks and average position for AI content is because the way we create AI content. And it's exactly what Jason said. We focus on creating AI content with those secondary and tertiary pages where they have low competition and they are more likely to rank in higher pages. So they're less likely to get big visibility. They're less likely to get more keywords ranking for them because they're not getting as much traffic and just human eyes on them because they are low volume searches. But that's when you look at the ratio of that, though, they do have clicks that they're getting to them. Especially the one thing that was interesting is new pages. So when new pages were published, that was the one time when organic conversions were actually a little bit higher for AI content. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
A good real world example that we used for a client is we were getting ahead of different events that took place. And so I think we published a piece of content about, did you get injured at the Daytona Bike Week? Right. And so we wrote that content and we published it like a month before the Daytona Bike Week, right? So that we got it indexed. And then because there was no search volume for that, no competition, it was on a site that has high DR. And so it instantly went to like the #1 result. It was also showing up in the AI overviews. And so after the Daytona Bike Week came and gone, the client got like 7 cases, right? Just as a result of us getting ahead of that using more of an AI embellished page. But anyway, that's like an example of how like our content strategists kind of think in terms of kind of separating the human generated content from some of the AI generated content.
Exactly. Yeah. So the takeaways from those studies, should you do it, using AI content for low hanging fruit, building out transactional silos, or for, more of those one-off time sensitive or kind of seasonal aspects is a really great way to use AI content. Or responding to events to spin up a page really quickly and be first to publish. That's a really great way to do it. But for all other content, especially if it's really high competition, high volume, high value, you can use AI to assist optimization, but it should not lead your content creation. At the end of the day, it needs to have a really, heavy human hand in order to be competitive. And that goes in hand with basically everything we've said, right? You're not going to get original data. You're not going to get all of the branding needs. You're not going to get all of the signals that we need and the specificity that we need for geo and AEO with just generating up a page in ChatGPT. So, alrighty. And then I know we wanted to save a little bit of time for the end for questions, but I wanted to really quickly run through some of my favorite tips for optimizing content with AI. So when you're generating content, first one is going to be pretty obvious. It's, having done the entities and that research, pulling that together, it's having ChatGPT go in and add all those things for you, right? You can just upload the article that you want to edit. It could be a document, it could be a URL, and then updating those entities and asking it to update based on what you want. So in this example, I asked it to incorporate the phrases and the questions, but you could also ask it to incorporate the personas or the perspectives and to write more content in that way. You can pull basically anything that you want from it and kind of customize the prompt in order to incorporate that information and have ChatGPT do it for you. And again, because you're not keyword stuffing, these are all entities, so they're a little bit more natural. AI is going to do a pretty good job of making it incorporated. You just want to kind of put some limits on there, like not any information or exceeding 1,000 words. I just put some limits just to make sure it didn't go too crazy, because ChatGPT really does love to yes and any prompt that you do. Also some additional prompts for analyzing and reassessing content. These are my favorite is looking for content gaps and semantically related information. So what semantically related information is missing from this URL, find content gaps, and then have it incorporate. Or you kind of Uno reverse it. Highlight any content that is not semantically relevant and then asking it to remove that content and replace it with content that it is. Another big thing, again, user intent is something that you can look at. The purpose of this page, you can explain what it is, and then does it satisfy the intent, and make the decisions that you need to based on that. That's one that we've actually had really good success with when we're looking at identifying and improving existing content that's been published that's maybe not performing up to par. Our writers have had really good success with that one. So I want to share that with you guys here. But that's for reassessing content. When you're creating content from scratch, especially if you're wanting to do with large scale production, that's where you run into those quality issues that I mentioned. And I wanted to list out some of the biggest AI mistakes, because we do work with a lot of clients who, want to produce their own content, or say they're going to produce their own content, and they send us back content that has been, we can see at very quick glance that it has been generated with AI and not gone through much human touch. So biggest mistakes that you can make with AI is really just taking the first output and calling it a day. You got to play with it. You got to work with the system. You got to use multiple prompts, or even not having, if you're going to put in one prompt, try to break it up into multiple stages, because the more complex your prompt, especially when it's just for generating content, the more likely it is, again, at scale, to introduce redundancies or issues. Other thing, repetition, fluff, common AI language, AI tells. I know there's certain phrases that I know and anyone on my content team are going to absolutely flag it's AI content. If we see the phrase navigating the complexities, it's written by AI. I mean, M-dash, I don't care. We actually love the M-dash. I'll fight over it. But navigating the complexities is the thing that gets my hackles up, because it's used in every single piece of legal content that has ever been generated by AI. So there's certain things that you want to look for. You want to make sure that you're peeling back. I would say for the most part, if a page generates, we aim to generate our AI content at about 1,200 words, and we keep about 800 of that. I would say we cut about 30% of every single page that's ever generated, just to make it tighter, easier to read, and more focused. Big thing, legal accuracy, lack of QA when it comes to that. Obviously, we want to make sure that that's as accurate as possible. And there are ways for all three of these first ones that you can use AI to address those, but the lack of internal links is a really big one. And this is one where I would not recommend that you use AI to fix this one, because the internal links, again, going back to the site structure, it plays such a big part in SEO and GEO that I do not recommend using AI to place your links, especially when you're doing transactional links or anything structural. It's just really, really important to make sure that those have a really, really sophisticated touch for incorporating internal links. And then, setting yourself up for success. Oh, so this is one where it's even before you begin writing. This is something that you can do to generate content, is introduce ChatGPT to your brand before you generate any content, make it commit to memory. So this is like, when we're talking about like creating all that competitive EAT data, so verdicts, your reviews, any of that trademark language, your about, page that has your personal backstory, your brand voice, all of your unique selling propositions. If you can create a master document that includes all of that information, share it with ChatGPT, and then ask it to commit to memory all of that information, you're going to have a stronger piece of content when it comes out. You can also commit the most important things that must be included on each page. Again, this is for when we're scaling up. You can't have everything on every single page from that list of that document, but you can have like, hey, these are the most important things that we know our clients value, or that you have seen highlighted in searches when you're looking at your brand. If you're just searching your brand name, what are the things that are coming up? What is ChatGPT saying about you? Maybe you want to have those things on every single page. Put those things and say, hey, this must be included in the page that you are generating. And then I can kind of fill out the rest, but you have at least the most important things included. And then also make sure that you're creating your author persona and establishing user intent, and preface it include that in the prompt that you actually write in the instructions that you give. So putting all of that even before you generate the page is going to make it a stronger product on the outset. And then lastly, having a really strong QA process. So here at Hennessy, when we do a generation, we have, when we generate an output, we have a prompt, a master prompt that is integrated into our content production pipeline. It goes to writer review, and then it does also spot checked by an editor. So every single page of AI content that we produce is reviewed at least by one person, often by two people. And making sure that it's hitting all of those marks, that we're not seeing any issues with quality or with accuracy. But these are some prompts that you can use. Is this legally accurate in my state in 2026? Does this align with the brand info provided? Does this align with user intent? Those prompts you can use to QA your own work, and they've, again, have pretty good success with ChatGPT 5.0. The other thing we like to say when we're saying is don't nitpick, because again, ChatGPT will yes and. So if you ask it and you get it to keep QAing and you keep asking it more and more questions, it will keep giving you more things. But a page can't rank if it doesn't exist, right? It can't drive you leads if you haven't published it. And that's why AI, that's like the beauty of AI content and generating content with AI. It's like if you don't have a presence in the rankings yet, if you don't have the content live, this is what allows you to do that. So don't hold yourself back by thinking it has to be perfect in order to be published. That's not the case. You can always go back and reassess it. You can always go back and fine tune it later on. Work with the team. You can see how the Google and AI is interpreting that page and make the changes later. But getting that page up is such a thing that AI has enabled us to do, and to be able to publish content faster, which is a great benefit. We've seen real benefit to our clients, and we know that it's working. The last thing would be to cross-reference your AI search engines. So running through all of these things and double-checking, not just ChatGPT. If you use ChatGPT, you can also use Grok, also use Claude. Double-check it. That just helps. If you don't have a second person in order to be your QA checker, use a stand-in as one of the other search engines, and they will help kind of verify and catch any thing that might have slipped through the cracks. All right.
So good, Jessica. Thank you so much. Let me bring our good friend Rob back to the stage here. Lots of good golden nuggets from this presentation. As you can tell, Jessica is very passionate about content, not just content, but content at scale. I mean, how many millions of words do we publish like every month, or how many pages now? What is our count?
Yeah, we publish roughly 2,600 pages. I believe that's every month. So that's, I think, a medium-sized George R.R. Martin novel a month is what we're producing.
Oh my God, yeah. So we had to figure out a way to kind of make sure that we scale this across our agency. And so there's other things too that, we really didn't get too deep into. There's also something called de-optimizing content, right? Mm-hmm. That's going in and kind of looking and kind of de-optimizing things. So if you have a page that's 14,000 words and we see the top 3 ranking pages on Google are now like 6,000 words, right? Well, we might have to kind of reduce some of the content, rewrite things, move things a little bit higher. So there's a lot of that kind of goes into this. Anyway, so we've got a couple more minutes for questions here. I'm going to let Rob take that over, and then we'll talk about our next webinar, which I'm really excited to promote as well. You're muted, Rob.
Sorry about that. I know we have a minute or two left, but here's a great question. You had mentioned a number of tools, Jessica. So if there's maybe just any certain ones you'd like to just highlight here at the end, just to make sure people know what are some of your favorite tools that you should definitely go out and get.
So I think, let me see, of the tools. So the ones that I use, a lot of them are ones by folks that we follow, just industry-wide. So like the Entity Enhancer one is one from Steve Toth, who I know Jason followed. I think, Jason, that's actually one that you shared with us and sent over. So it's just playing around. It's people who are really tweaking and testing and doing some things, and then we tweak it and test it ourselves, and just seeing what works, right? So what works within not only that's getting us good results that can be replicable and scalable, right? Because if we look at that entity enhancer, right, you did that for car accident, but we're not going to be able to use that same spreadsheet for every single car accident page. Out of those 2,600 pages that we create every month, probably 50 of them are car accident pages. And if we did that same process for every single page, it would get really repetitive. So it's working at finding, okay, well, how can we use this information? How can we vary it? What works for our process, right? If you're producing at a much smaller scale, a tool like that is potentially just is much easier to manage and use on that level. But if the question is also, how do we determine which entities that are most relevant and valuable to incorporate your content strategy? I would say also just cross-referencing with tools like Ahrefs or SEMrush, anything that you can do to see maybe if there is proof of traditional search volume, and that's the thing that you can look at first and foremost. You can also kind of rank it again by looking at maybe your like the marketing funnel, right? So let's focus on the ones like those maybe search queries and additional queries. Like focus on the ones that are more focused on the actual transaction, the actual conversion decision, because those are ones that are going to drive leads first and foremost. Then when you have, you see how that performs, the next one you can focus on is more consideration, so this higher level. And then you can focus on the ones that are maybe more general, providing information, incorporate those later down the line, but focusing on the ones that are really aimed at what you want your users to do first and foremost, that's something you can take into consideration as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. We're almost right at about time right now. Do you still have the slides up to talk about the next webinars that are coming up?
Oh, I do.
Okay. So while she brings that up, there was a couple questions earlier, like will this be recorded? Can other people see it? Maybe you got some inspiration. You want to share this with the people that are kind of doing your content. Yes, probably within the next couple hours or by tomorrow morning. If you go to Hennessy.com and you click on free webinars, you'll be able to see this webinar. You'll be able to share it. You'll be able to see the previous 2 webinars as well. So we definitely have that archive there. And then our next webinar will be more of an Ask Me Anything. So that will be me, and I believe Blinn, our CTO, will be on that. So if you've got questions that are relevant to your law firm, bring those questions, and then we'll basically have a full webinar about just an Ask Me Anything. We could talk about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about there. And then as for our next webinar, I don't see it, Jessica. I'm not sure if you're sharing the screen or not. Let me see.
Let me try again. Sorry, 1 second.
Okay, no big deal. Oh, wait, you know why? I know why.
There we go.
There you go. Perfect. There it is. All right, so this is the next webinar. You can mark your calendars. This is March 11th. And then this is our good friend, Rick, who years and years ago, I asked everybody that I knew, who is the best paid social person in the world? And all hands pointed to Rick. And Rick is across the pond. He's in the UK. He's over in Manchester. So if you've seen our webinar and if you've seen the promotion on Facebook, that's his body of work. And so we're proud to have him. And so he will be doing a webinar talking about how to incorporate AI with Meta, specifically for law firms so that you can get higher quality leads to your firm. You definitely don't want to miss this one. You can go to Hennessy.com, click on get registered so that it's on your calendar invite, and it's going to be super exciting. And plus, he's just a great human being and one of the nicest people that I know. So, so you'll get a chance to kind of meet Rick. With that being said, again, we want to thank everybody for your time. I want to thank Jessica for spending so much time putting together this amazing webinar. As you know, one of our philosophies at Hennessy Digital is to continuously educate our audience, and that's what we stand for. And we like to give back. And if you need help with your digital marketing or content strategy, Rob, what's the best way to contact you here?
There we go. My email address is rob@hennessy.com, and looks like we've got a QR code you can scan.
Perfect. Awesome. With that being said, we're going to sign off, and we will see you guys again in 2 weeks for the Ask Me Anything, and then in 30 days for our next webinar with Rick. Thank you so much.